Welcome back. Looks like my last video got some attention, and one thing I noticed, I got a couple comments asking, saying people were interested in my thought process and what I had to say, and it'd be nice to see some data to back it up, or how the server shards, mega server issue plays into this idea of like being able to sustain a Wrath Classic era server in light of Cataclysm coming, and this argument that Blizzard delivered on fragmentation. Now, I'll just drop the clip here again quick so we can get a little refresher, and then we'll address this.
Offerings that the Classic team has at the moment, we were very conscious about not wanting to further fragmented the population and where people want to join into this journey. So we currently don't have plans to do so.
Frankly, I don't buy the explanation for fragmentation, and I said that before. But I'm going to dive into that a little bit with some of Blizzard's own words and just some of the in-game statistics and evidence we have on that. So let's get into it here, and I'll put the comment on here. So I have a comment from Keck Get Wreck, who says, "Good opinions, even if I don't agree with all. Would be cool if you could bring some numbers or charts to push your points further." And so that sounds like a great idea, because that first video I did was really super stream of consciousness. If you didn't notice from the fact that I was just rambling and talking about like 500 different things, there was no script. And there's no script for this one either, other than I have just a couple things I want to look at to validate my thoughts here. So first off, I'm going to read from a Blizzard post. This came out at the launch of Wrath Classic's pre-patch, and people having to wait like 6 hours to log in to the Wrath servers. And basically the gist of Blizzard's post on how to address the login queues is they've disabled new character creation, and free character transfers are alleviating some of the queues, but ultimately, layering and other things that would increase the population on servers was not the solution, and that really the solution was for more people to play on more servers. And the way they came to this argument is to show that essentially the numbers we were playing at, the populations we were playing on servers with, were multiple times larger than what constituted a healthy Wrath of the Lich King realm in 2008. And so I'll put the post up here on the screen now. They're saying that within the US, for example, the realm Sulphurous had 4 times what the number of concurrent players that a full 2008 realm would have. And so they said in the post here, "I wish I could share exact numbers with you, but suffice to say, the realms above have a peak concurrent population ranging from several thousand to well over 10,000 players each day." So they're saying that several thousand to well over 10,000. If you look at this chart, that means they have 4 times as many players as was full back in Wrath of the Lich King. Or in the least case here, Westfall, which is a realm I did have characters on, has 2 times what a full realm was back in 2008. So what does that mean? Well, again, Blizzard says they can't deliver numbers here on this, but I can Google a little bit. I'm going to say, what was the server cap size in vanilla WoW? And we get fluctuating answers. Essentially, if I go through Google, I'm going to find an answer that says that essentially WoW launched with a server concurrent player cap of 2,500, but as is documented in Blizzard's own records and everything, the game was wildly more successful than they ever imagined. So they had to launch servers, and I think eventually they had to start raising the caps on those servers and upgrading them as well. So a lot of people are saying online here, if I look it up, that it's somewhere around 5,000 was the server cap around the time of 2008 Wrath of the Lich King. And that kind of falls in line with what they're saying in the Blizzard post. Now, if you're saying the post says some realms even have over 10,000. So some realms, if we're looking at the cap here, Sulphurous being 4 times the typical 2008 realm, then that means if 10,000 plus, let's just say 15,000. If that's roughly 4 times, then we're looking at 3,500 or maybe 4,000. So that kind of jives with what we're seeing on Google here, because there is no hard numbers that we've ever been provided with on what constitutes their caps. And then they're saying here they can't give us those exact numbers, but he is saying a number of over 10,000. And that is 4 times what constitutes a healthy server. Now, another thing they say is that any demographic data available on third-party websites should not be used as a basis for a decision around where to play. So that's saying that their third-party websites giving you population data are not entirely accurate. But it's not outright saying that they're wrong. It's saying that in 2008, you could have, in theory, if I'm just doing a ballpark of the numbers they gave and the multiplier they're showing, in theory, you could have a healthy server at around 2,500 players back in 2008. Just ballparking based on this. If that's the case, he's saying not that the demographic data from websites is wrong. They're saying that the demographic data from websites is potentially pointless, because you might see a number of 2,500, 3,000, 4,000, and in comparison to 25,000, that seems low, but it really doesn't matter. And I'm going to show you that here in a second. Now, I'm going to cut the footage here. All right, so here I am logging in at prime time, and this is Peggle PvE on Wrath. This is live Wrath right now, and this is what it looks like to be in Stormwind on a server that online demographics show to be at about a population of 17,000, right? And there are other servers with like double the monthly users as this one. According to Ironforge.pro, there are much more populated servers, but this is the one I was playing on and was going to play on Wrath before deleting the characters in the previous video. And yeah, so this is what a population of 17,000 looks like on a server near you. And to me, this looks like pretty active for a population. It looks like I'd be able to find groups, I'd be able to do content, I'd be able to find raids, be able to do all sorts of stuff, right? So just keep that number in mind, and then we're going to take a look at Classic era, what that looks like. So this is the Classic era Peggle server, which is in the US East PvE bracket, which comprises a few different servers. So like Mancrick's on here as well. So you're seeing multiple servers on, but the entire US East bracket comprises a average player base of about 2,500. And that's what that looks like here in Stormwind primetime. People running about, getting ready to do their groups, getting ready to potentially do content, the home base, so to speak, you know? So maybe, you know, Wrath looks a little more, just a little bit more bustling than what's going on here, but this does not look dead by any means. And I've been playing Classic era. This is my 60 Warlock. I have a 60 Rogue. I'm working on another Warrior. I have a 60 Paladin as well. This Classic era has had its up and down. And again, this isn't hardcore. This is just regular old Classic era, the version that got put out to pasture when TBC, I shouldn't say put out to pasture because it still exists, but when TBC came out, you know, the word was everyone's moving to TBC and Classic era is going to be dead. Well, that was true for few weeks or so. But eventually people started trickling back into here, started getting back on their main, started doing stuff, playing with their friends that were here. And I noticed that, yeah, there was a dip when new content came out for Classic, but eventually people start repopulating into this space here. And so yeah, it's been nice coming back on here. At any given point, I've been able to come back on my rogue and my warlock here, and I've done ZGs, I've done molten cores, I've done even dumb stuff like Scholomance. And you might be thinking, oh wow, that another molten core run, whoop-de-doo. I did a BWL as well, but it's like, big whoop, who cares? And it's like, well, those of us who like the legacy content, I love being able to do that. I love having a community to do that. I love just screwing around. Let's turn off my cam for a bit here, Set, and my border. And let's look at what's going on in the groups. So we have Olbers looking for group. Arena, Lobers, Ubers, Onyxia. Looking for ZG. Dire Mall. Some mid-range quests. People are looking for groups, and they're doing them, and they're looking for man for different things. I've only been online for a few minutes here. That being the case, I've regularly got groups on this server since it supposedly died, since it supposedly became unplayable, and no one's touching it. Well, this is the no one they're talking about, and this is the fragmentation. This is the fragmentation they're talking about. What it looks like. I just showed you a Wrath server at prime time. And now I'm showing you a Classic era server at prime time, right? Okay, great. So with that footage, we just looked at two different versions of the game. We looked at Wrath era and we looked at Classic era. One of them I'm on a server that has identified at around 17,000 players over the course of a week, in comparison to a server from a different version of the game that has roughly 2,500 players over the course of the week. So we're talking 7 times as many players. But as far as what you're seeing on the screen as players and an active, like, prime time pool of people to do content with, is there really that much of a noticeable difference? And I think that's what the Blizzard post is saying, is you don't need servers of 30,000 people to justify it being a healthy, playable space for you to enjoy the game. You only really need 2,500 people, maybe 4,000, maybe 5,000 at absolute peak, to have a healthy server. And again, when I went into that Classic era version, we're looking at a 2,500 person over a course of a week player base. That place looked packed. There's plenty of people to do stuff with. And that's my experience leveling that warrior on Classic era as well. I'm finding people all the time. I'm waiting on quest mobs to respawn because there's 4 or 5 people killing everything all around. There are a lot of people playing on that server. And I don't know what is up with the uptick, why that's the case. Obviously, hardcore may be playing a role in that, but that is Classic era. That's not hardcore. That's not, Season of Discovery isn't out yet. Maybe people are just hyped for Season of Discovery. I don't know. But the point being, you don't need giant numbers to justify a server or 2 or 3 or 4 existing for a East Coast PvE, West Coast PvE, East Coast PvP, West Coast PvP. 4 servers, right? At least in America, you probably need a couple. So we're maybe looking at 6. Maybe you don't even need an East or West Coast. Deal with the time difference, guys. Have 1 PvE. I think you would actually need a bit more than that for Wrath. But I'm giving this point to the Cataclysm people. A lot of the Cata fans are saying everybody's going to want to move on. Wrath is dead. It's the raid log expansion, etc. That's not what I'm seeing on the people's sentiments on the forums. That's not what I'm seeing in my comments. I'm seeing people say left and right, I want to stay in Wrath, just like I do. But let's just give that point to the Wrath people. Now, I'm gonna, again, they say you can't completely trust the demographics from the sites, but I'm gonna pull up Wrath's all realms overall player base. And Ironforge Pro tells me that overall in the last week, there's a player base of 400,000 unique players that have logged in. Or maybe characters. Maybe they can't tell which accounts those characters. So if this data is wrong, let's just cut it in half. Let's say this could be entirely accurate, and some of these server numbers kind of reflect what was in that Blizzard post. If we're talking 4 times, 3 times the server populations, if I go down to Westfall and I see a server population of 6,400, and Blizzard was saying that population is roughly 2 times of what was viable back in 2008, that tracks. That kind of tells me Ironforge Pro not entirely wrong. They're in the ballpark. But let's just say that Ironforge Pro is off the mark, and let's slice their numbers in half. Let's say, let's just give them this point and say Wrath has 200,000 unique concurrent players, right? Well, supposedly, in order to run a viable Wrath server, you would need only 2% of people of that 200,000. If I have 1%, that gives me 2,000 people. If I have 2%, that gives me 4,000 people. That's enough for a server. Now, some people might want to play PvE, some people might want to play PvP. So let's say 5%. 2.5% go to PvE, 2.5% go to PvP. Remain in Wrath. I can sustain servers now in 2008 levels. The health of the game that it was at back when Wrath was live can be sustained with 5% of the overall player base on just this ballpark estimate where I'm being very conservative on the number of people playing. That leaves Cataclysm. If Cataclysm is going to be a healthy expansion played by players, and let's assume that, and I think this is a very generous assumption, let's assume that 95% of people move on to Cataclysm. That means you have roughly 190,000 people or so moving on to Cataclysm. Are you telling me the player base is too fragmented for either side to have healthy servers that are playable to justify, their subs remaining going and everything? I think that explanation just doesn't make sense. There's no way that they say, oh, well, we've got hardcore, we've got season of discovery, we've got this, we've got that. We can't fragment the player base any further. And it's like, you told me yourself, Blizzard, that a healthy server is possible with just 2,500 to 5,000 people. That was the case you made for me moving my character off of Benediction and Pagel onto Old Blanchy, of all places, and Westfall. You said you can have a great experience on any of those servers, player. That's Blizzard's own take. And now they're saying, I don't think you can have a great experience if we keep splitting you guys up like this. I don't. There's something else here. There's another narrative, and if I'm gonna put my I don't do this often. I like Warcraft. I don't often become a naysayer when it comes to this game. I love Classic and have played it as much as I can. I didn't get to play Wrath because of, at first, server issues and then my job after that. But if I'm putting my Bobby Kotick is at the helm for another 3 months hat on, right? Or these plans were in the works before Microsoft got the reins. If I'm putting that hat on, right? The thing about Wrath, preserving that realm, you can't sell me any boosts on that realm. You can't sell me a Blazing Fire Mount. Let's see if we can find a Blazing Fire Mount around here on the screen. Nope, don't have one just yet. That actually gives me hope. That kind of gives me hope that there isn't like 30 people on their giant Ragnaros mount that they bought for the Cata pre-expansion here. But I've seen a couple floating around. But what I'll say is, if I'm putting my cynical hat on here, I just think that people staying in Wrath, they'll pay their subscription just fine. They'll enjoy the game. But what they won't be doing is buying boosts. They won't be buying new mount packages. They won't be buying the Blazing Fire Super Edition with the Rathian pet. They won't be buying the Mop mount or the Mop boost or any of that. They won't be buying the WAD one because they're like, you know what? I like this version of the game. I'm good at just my 15 bucks, right? And I think that Blizzard is doing a thing of, if we push them into that space, they'll be more likely to engage in those transactions that you don't really need. Like, I don't need a boost in Wrath. Actually, I might if they announce they're doing a Wrath preservation server. Well, all my guys I just deleted and unlearned their professions and everything. I'm just kidding. I would never do that. I like the game too much to boost through it. I love playing the game, but and that's kind of the thing too, is with Wrath they won't be able to do their like, a new season's coming, a new this is coming, this is happening, hardcore is coming, you know. And that's why I think hardcore servers were made instead of just a character toggle option. Was it's a new thing to push to get you to re-up your sub. It's different enough and putting you in this special, unique space that feels completely different. It doesn't feel like the same game. And I think that's what drives them to make some of these decisions, because fragmentation is just based on their own account of what constitutes healthy servers. I can't believe that fragmentation is the actual reason. I can't believe that they don't think that 3% of people want to just stay in this version of the game and that they can shore up one server to do that. And, you know, if TBC and Wrath aren't the proof of like people want to stick around and play these versions of the game, if they don't have the evidence of that, then go into Classic Era, where people are still playing Classic Era just for shits and giggles of it, and look at the player base there. Those are active realms. Those are active regions. They've merged the servers together, and in doing so, they've created a community that can sustain gameplay pretty damn well. So I really just don't buy this argument based on what they're saying. Beyond that, the question is, okay, well, Wrath gets preserved forever. What does that mean? You can just preserve it forever. But a lot of people complain that Wrath is like the raid log expansion. Nobody does anything because, you know, Wrath was seasonal, so everybody just gets funneled into ICC. You know, I'd be cool with this. Might be a little bit of hashtag changes, but I would be cool with saying, well, you know what? Let's do a faded tier above all the other tiers that has Nax, Ulduar, Tournament, all tuned a tier above ICC, and then yet another tier of ICC tuning as well, tiered one above, and it rotates every week or rotates every 2 weeks or something. You know, something that puts a little bit of spice in there, a new level of gear. And then think about those combinations of, if you have another layer of old sets, like, oh, well, what if I mix and match my sets to get my 4-piece? What if I can do some crazy combos? Or what if there's some like trinkets that they're really good at the beginning of the expansion, but their item level just means they fall off? Well, you can start to play some of those games and start to have some of those fun. People might find that too disruptive of what they love about Wrath. Who knows? But that's the kind of thing where it's like, well, that becomes a different end game that is more of a full sampling of the content of the patch cycle. I could see them doing that and it really helping the intrigue of Wrath. And I want TBC servers, but if they're never going to do a TBC server, if Wrath is the end of Classic, at least in that era or that phase, then toss the TBC raids in there as well. Tune those up to that tier and have the rotation be between like 8 different raids over the course of a couple months. You can try and get those crazy, weird item builds and like just see what kind of zany character you can build out of the full pool of items all being at the same item level. That'd be really interesting to me, and I would play the shit out of that basically forever. But that's just me. I don't know, you know. I'll also give a little bit of a bone of, what's a way in which they could make class or Cataclysm better. Um, I want for everybody to plays Cataclysm. I want you to have that game and for you to enjoy it. And I was on the forums posting about what they should do is expand the level brackets of Cataclysm to reach up to 80. Those new zones in the world, you're leaving them so early. You're like, I was doing gray and green quests in Cataclysm. You're leaving them so early. It's like, well, if you extend those up to 80, then you don't have that weird timey shifty thing where you're going back to TVC in the order of events, going back to Wrath, and you could just keep playing in the world you're in. You could feasibly like go to Tonorus, Ungoro, Silithus, and then back to Uldum in that progression if they expanded the level brackets. But instead they're like, oh, we're just gonna make the XP in TBC and Wrath trivial. And I'm like, you can still shorten the total time to level, just expand the brackets up, dude. Like, that would be huge for me. That is kind of the way it works in live, where you can just choose the expansion you want to play and skip other expansions. I hated jumping from expansion to expansion after they started tacking them on and continually shrunk the XP to where it's like, I've done half of a zone in expansion and I'm already leaving. This is stupid. That would be huge for Cataclysm Classic. I understand that's a hashtag changes thing, but I mean, at that point, honestly, that's what they should have done in the first place. When the game first came out, they should have just made it so when you finish the new old world, you're then going to the Cataclysm's new zones, right? And then similarly, they should just make it so like Cataclysm professions start at like skill 200 so that you're leveling, you're doing your blacksmithing and your all of your trade skills and everything, and then you don't have to step away from the path you're on to like, oh, I gotta go to Outland, I gotta go to Northrend, I gotta go do those professions there for God knows what reason. I can just keep doing it here, and the overlap between New Old World and Cataclysm just brings you to that space where you just keep going. And I think that would be huge for the quality of life of just the leveling experience being a little bit more enjoyable in Cata. And instead, Blizzard's take is to just, it was back in the day and they're doing it even more now, is just to keep trivializing the experience and get you to endgame as fast as you can. And it's like, well, if that's the case, just let me print 80s. It doesn't matter. Like, I know you have your boost, but what is the point of leveling if it's all just going to be trivial and pointless? I don't necessarily see the point. So I think there's ways to improve Cataclysm too, to make it more fun. And they seem to just be like, we're just not going to address any of that at all. You're getting the game back, warts and all. And I understand that that's the take for Classic, but at this point they've changed so much that it's like, what does it even matter? Just improve the game. Make Cataclysm not suck nearly as bad. But I don't know. And God, I just think when that Dragon Soul patch comes out, like, what even is... They've got to do like a Cata Plus or something. Like, you're going to push people to Dragon Soul? I'm sorry, but that was so bad. I hated that patch. That was... And like, you can say, oh, well, they won't be doing LFR. They'll keep LFR out of it. Well, we'll see. But good Lord. That raid was, one, setting, completely uninspired. Poop in the ground, Wormrest Temple, etc. So it's like a repackaged asset raid. And then they do Deathwing's back. And that fight super sucked. So, even if you love Cata, if you love the classes and the specs and the changes and the difficulty of dungeons and you liked Firelands or whatever, I can only imagine what that post of like Dragon Souls coming March 3rd, 2025. I'm just picking a random number out of my ass. And it's just like, who is clicking on that? Like, yay! Unless significant changes are made to that raid. I don't know. We'll have to see. But if you love Classic, or if you love Cata, go for it. Live the dream. I want that for you. I just want to be able to play Wrath basically forever. And again, I think I've shown that that is possible. I don't think fragmentation's an issue, and I think Blizzard knows that too. I'm almost certain Blizzard knows fragmentation isn't an issue when it comes to how many freaking people are playing this game. Otherwise, you wouldn't have 6-hour queues, right? If we're all going to log into Cata, which I'm not, but let's say everyone's going to log into Cata to their 6-hour queue on launch night, wouldn't you hope that you had a different version of your character to log into instead? Like, oh, okay, well, I'm not playing this game tonight, but I'll just go play Wrath then. You know, and they're saying, well, that's going to be Season of Discovery, that's going to be Classic Era, you know, I guess. Yeah, I am a subscriber. I don't have a protest vote here to unsubscribe, but many of you do. So we'll see what happens. I think I've said everything again at this point. I've rambled, I've repeated, my mouth is dry, but I appreciate you guys' feedback. I appreciate the people telling me I'm a crybaby, whiny loser. But honestly, I feel like this needs to get out there. I see a lot of people saying this, and I feel like this needs to get to the devs. Like the passion that me and quite a few other people have for this, I think it needs to be out there. I'll just say that. I'm not doing this for views. I'm not doing this for engagement. I want to share my feelings, and I want you to share yours, and I want people to hear that this matters. So, peace out. Love you. Have a good week, everybody. We'll see you around.